Hi, Ben. Aloha, my brother.
Hey, how you doing?
What's going on?
What's happening? What's happening?
A big aloha and mahalo. Oh, it sounds good. First, Ivan, a huge aloha and mahalo, and welcome back, my brother. You were last on with us in 2012, so it's great to
Oh,
have you
really?
back on. Yeah,
All right.
not that
Yeah.
not that you'd remember that, but we appreciate it. Thank you.
Cool. Thank you, man. Thanks for inviting me.
And it's great to have you back. And you were doing a show on Maui, I think, at that time.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah, I remember that. Some sort of festival, some crazy thing over there, I believe. Yeah, I remember that.
Okay, because you didn't come here, as I recall, and we were just
Right,
talking
right.
on the phone. But it was cool because you were sharing stories. And now, where are you joining us from today?
I'm in New Orleans, Louisiana.
Okay, which is
Yeah,
obvious
New
for
Orleans.
a cat like you, but we're doing this
Right.
series. You're part of this series called Off the Road. So
Okay.
we start out. We've been talking to people all over the world during the pandemic and have kept it going, and so we just find out where people are. So, have you been in New Orleans since this whole crisis started, or have you gone around and been out on the road?
I have not been on the road, but I have. Uh, I've gotten out of New Orleans a couple of times. Yeah.
Where'd you go to?
I did. I had a job. Our band, Dumpster Funk, had a job doing some music for a film.
Hmm.
And we went to Los Angeles. And this is in August of last year.
Wow.
And we did a whole, it was a serious little production going on with the whole COVID protocols and everything that was in place for us to do this. So we were lucky. We were fortunate that we had a gig at that time.
Right.
It was yeah, like I said, it was some music for a film, and we were flown to Los Angeles on a private jet. They flew us out there, and we were tested twice. We COVID tested twice a week. We
Wow.
were there for 6 weeks. We were put up at a hotel that was a cool little boutique hotel that only has like 11 or so rooms, and we took the hotel. It was only us staying there. Yes, so we were staying. Just we would took over the hotel, and we were not allowed to go anywhere other than to the studio every day and work and do this music. And you had to order takeout, delivery food, stuff like that. We weren't allowed to be around anyone outside of our little bubble,
Right.
I guess you could call it. And
Sure.
that was it. We were there for 6 weeks. And that was in August. And I'm gonna go back in a little bit and tell you, okay, this is, and before that, I had COVID in March.
Whoa.
Yeah, I had COVID last year, March, and it kind of went, it lasted for about 5 or 6 weeks from March 15th to like May. I was finally tested negative on May the 5th.
Actually, I remember reading something about that now that you
Yeah,
mention it.
yeah.
Tell us about that. You're the first guest in the series, I think, who actually had it. How did you realize you had it? Where did you think you got it? How bad did it
I
get?
I was in New York. I had a gig in New York, and turns out the funny thing was I actually I did something very careless and stupid because we had just heard, we were just hearing about this thing, and not knowing what it was going to ultimately turn out to be. But we knew that there was some uh, you know possible possible bad situation on the rise. I mean, and there was a little caution you could feel, but not quite yet because there were no masks yet, and but we were fist pumping
Mm.
and stuff because people had heard little rumbles about the COVID, and so we were at this doing we were going to do this show, and the night 2 nights before the show I was doing, I thought it was a good idea to go to Madison Square Garden and see the 50th year anniversary of the Allman Brothers. It was the show called The Brothers
Right.
at MSG, and I thought it was a good idea to go there. I went to that, and then the night before the show that I was scheduled to do, we were all hanging out, bunch of us, and everybody would get in this. We started getting notifications on your phone that the NBA was shutting down, and that was the first major organization that shut down. Was the National Basketball Association,
Right.
and so that was like a big, a big red flag. Okay, NBA is shutting down. Wow! And so the show that we were doing, they made it a streaming show.
What
And
venue was it in?
the venue? The venue was the Beacon Theater,
Oh, wow.
and it was supposed to be probably for maybe 3,000 people, but it turned out they did a live stream event. And I think they had maybe a couple hundred people there, friends and family kind of audience.
It was Dumpster Funk?
No, it wasn't Dumpster Funk. No, it wasn't.
Okay.
And then I went home, and there were others that were on this same show that had announced that they had caught COVID. I'm just going to tell you, and that's all I'm going to say about it, except a person, an artist that we know and love, Jackson Brown, got back home to California, I assume, and he announced that he tested positive for COVID, and he was at this show. So, yeah, and there was a few of us that ended up that weekend, maybe that Sunday or so. I started having fever, about 100 and 101 at first, and I was cast off to the back room of our house. Because you go to the back. Ice put me in isolation in the back, and quarantined me off to the back room, and I had fever upwards of 103, 102.9, 103. I had no appetite. I was in bad shape. My oxygen levels were getting pretty low. Oxygen levels had gone down, like from what I understand, below 80. And my lady had one of those oximeter things, and luckily we got that, and we were able to gauge that, and we were aware of that, and we knew that, okay, that's not a good thing. So I was lucky. I was lucky because the back room of our house has a door that I could open, and I could have air circulating in it, which was cool. And we were also lucky that an acquaintance, a friend of ours, connected us with an ER doctor that got me an oxygen tank.
Wow.
So they said you show up at this hospital, and they're going to give you an oxygen tank. So I went to a hospital, and come to find out, though, when I went to and I was feeling really bad. I was feeling really bad, like I had some gnarly kind of flu thing. I had never felt this particular way in my entire life. And I drove myself to the hospital. They also took X-rays, found out I had double pneumonia. Also, by this time, a week and a half or so had gone by. I had been turned down to try to get tested twice and was turned down. And finally, actually that day, I went and got tested. And that was March the 23rd. And like I said, this all started on the 15th. So on the 23rd, I got tested, and I didn't get the results for another 10 days or so. I just assumed I had it. And I had conferred with a couple of doctors that said, you know what, just assume that you have it. And because I got tested for flu, influenza A and B, and that was ruled out. So, yeah, you must have this COVID thing. So I got this oxygen tank. I went home, and then an oxygen machine was delivered to my house, one that you plug into the wall. So I had that. I utilized that helped get me through. Finally got an appetite back. I think I lost maybe at least 20 or so pounds, 25 pounds during this time. I started experiencing the shortness of breath a couple of weeks in, and yeah, it was gnarly, man. And I was totally paranoid and scared, and oh man.
No hospital ever.
I did not have to stay in any hospital. Like the only time I went to that the emergency room to get an oxygen tank.
Right.
Luckily, it was early on, and there was something like that available for me.
Right.
So I had the oxygen machine at my house. So I was in that back room utilizing the oxygen, and that got me through. And I finally, and the pneumonia took a while to me because that lasted for a minute, and the shortness of breath that kind of occurred. And then I got some advice from my dad and from other people that told me maybe you might want to do some breathing exercises, things of that nature. I started taking walks when I felt that I had the strength to do that. I also started doing some streaming performances from my house. I started playing and doing like an hour-long streaming show from my house on Facebook and whatnot. And that, unbeknownst to me at the time, was helping me. Singing was helping to exercise my lungs.
Right.
Now, granted, when I would do these little streaming shows, I was feeling totally not good at all. And by the end of an hour of trying to sing and stuff like that, I was totally exhausted, right? So yeah, and mentally, it really, and at some point, my lady was trying to get me to. She was. I was trying to remember my code to my phone, just in case something happened and I had to go to the hospital. I needed to be able to be contacted and be reached. I couldn't remember my code to my phone. My phone disabled. I had to get my phone reset. My mind was foggy at times. It was totally something different, something I had never experienced in my entire life. And then finally, like I said, I got the test results came back around April the 2nd. And they said, yeah, you're positive. But by this time I was well into it, and I had assumed that I had it.
Sure.
And I was kind of I acted as accordingly, and I was doing a lot of the things that I was hearing people say that you might want to do. And I was home remedies because no doctor could really tell you what to do for it. And so I was taking a lot of vitamin D3, lots of vitamin C, lots of zinc. I was doing steams where we would boil some hot water with some lemon and orange peel and garlic and ginger, and I would stand over that stuff and breathe it in. All kinds of stuff I was trying.
You point out a lot of interesting stuff from the beginning about how there weren't even tests and no one really knew a lot about it.
Well, there was tests. They just weren't giving you the test if you didn't show serious symptoms. Like I went to try to get tested twice, and I wasn't like obviously ill. And just so happens I may have taken Tylenol or something earlier. So my temperature was normal at that particular time. And they wouldn't test me unless, if I would have had a high fever, they probably would have tested me.
Right.
But just so happens they took my temperature, and it was, I'm 98.7. Okay, we're not testing you.
Amazing.
And then I went a second time, another place, and they took my temperature, and it was 98.8. We're not testing you. Finally, through a friend at the musicians clinic, New Orleans Musicians Clinic, they arranged for me to get a test. And meanwhile, the household had gotten sick. My lady, she had it. She tested positive as well. She didn't have as bad a version as I had, but I was so busy just being miserable myself. I didn't really notice how sick she was because she was looking after me. So God bless her,
Unbelievable.
Unbelievable. Yeah, but I got through it and finally tested again on May 1st, and May 5th, I got those results back and I was negative. And I had gotten through it, and I was still feeling slightly, the breathing, the shortness of breath had subsided, but every now and again I would still have maybe a labored breath here and there. And then mentally it was kind of a battle, the fatigue and the trauma, it was like PS, post-traumatic stress disorder I was feeling from having gone through this. And it was something. It was some kind of journey, man. I got to tell you. And And luckily for our band, we ended up having this gig that was going to happen in August.
Right.
Yeah, so I was able to go do a gig. I had already had the COVID, and now I'm going to
Unbelievable.
go do this gig. And so I've been tested for COVID now probably 30, 35 times.
Right.
Yeah, right? I've been tested a lot. Yeah.
You have the most
Yeah.
remarkable story, Ivan, of I mean,
And what's funny, I'm gonna tell you, Gavin, this is what's kind of hilarious about it. What's funny is that my prior life back in the days, I used to do some recreational things that were not very smart back in the 80s. And I think some of that stuff prepared my nose for the COVID test because it didn't bother me when they stuck the thing way up your nose. It didn't bother me. I would watch other people take the test, and they would wince
right.
and be flinching. I was like, that far you is that as far you can go up there? Go, come on. But there you go. Hey, the COVID nose.
Listen to
Yeah,
you.
I did a lot of hanging out in the '80s.
No, I'm sure you did, and
Yeah, right.
I love how you stick the little piano tinkling right in there at the right
Yeah, the COVID nose.
moment.
Yeah,
That's funny. Well, that could be a song for the follow up for where.
COVID nose. Oh my God.
Well, that would be a
Yeah.
good one. With George Clinton would laugh on that.
You
Certainly,
know what? George would. George would get a kick out of that one.
he definitely
Yeah,
definitely
yeah.
would. Well, what a remarkable. And you mentioned your father, Aaron, and obviously he's a huge force in music, and you had turned to him for advice.
Yeah.
Have you been able to
Well,
reconnect with him since all this a bunch, or?
yeah, he and I have been he and I've talked we talk pretty much at least maybe once or twice a week at least. We talk all the time. And he'd had asthma before, and he'd had problems with his lungs, and he told me things like, do breathing exercises and stuff like that. And I realized that, okay, this is something. It's like riding a bike. Your lungs know what they're supposed to do, but if you just lie there and let this pneumonia crap just kind of sit and sulk and saturate all up in your lungs, your lungs will just go and let them do it. But if you start working your lungs, I was fortunate that I didn't have to go lay up in the hospital, because that's what I believe happened to a lot of people. You're laying in that hospital bed, and that stuff's just sitting there, tearing you up. So it's like I said, as soon as I felt like I had the strength, I started taking walks. Like I'd walk around the block, and as time went on, I'd make the walk would last a little longer. I'd walk a few more blocks, and then
Right.
that kind of thing. So
Increasing the
yeah,
walk each time. Yeah, I get it.
exactly. Oh yeah. And so that helped me, man. That a lot of that stuff that saved me. You
What a
know.
trip the whole thing starts at an event, the same event that Jackson Brown basically got sick at. You're saying you were both there at the same place.
Yeah.
Unbelievable, unreal. And is it okay to say who you were playing for, or because you never really said who the gig was?
I
No problem. We don't have to
I'm
talk about.
gonna
No
I'm
problem.
gonna I'm not gonna say that. No.
Okay.
No, I ain't gonna say. I ain't gonna say.
It's all right. It's all right, my brother.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and so turning, so that was an exciting thing that you were able to do a project when so many folks weren't able to really work, and that they took all those precautions and made that happen. As for
Yeah.
the record itself, I understand was recorded before the pandemic, and I guess the pandemic affected the release of it too.
Yes, well, most of the record was recorded before the pandemic, but we did do some little bits and pieces while we were locked down. We found time to fix a few things, and we added some stuff that wasn't previously on the record. The Marcus King guitar stuff that happened. He did that stuff during the pandemic.
Also, it was added to mostly
That
complete
was
stuff.
added. Yeah, that was added. And we had a version of Justice that we had released prior. That was this 4-year-old tune that came out in 2017. And after seeing all the horrible things that was going on around us, along with the pandemic, watching, young brothers, black men getting killed by police officers and stuff like that. We had this song called Justice that was inspired by a lot of these events. And then when we saw it, oh my God, it just keeps happening. We got to reboot that song Justice. And we had a rap that was done by Charlie Tuna. And we did that and added that to Justice and did a remix on it. And then that became Justice 2020.
Correct, right, which is
And
on the album.
we included that.
Very powerful song too, amidst all this
Yeah,
serious topics that just have continued into 2021, as you obviously know.
yeah, right. It's crazy.
I mean, none of that has really changed, and so you were obviously very touched by that. I'm imagining during the height of that last year, not long after George Floyd was killed,
Yeah,
it must have really hit you hard.
yeah, all of that, and then being a kid from, I mean, I grew up in the 60s and 70s. I was a child during those times, and I saw a lot of civil unrest and a lot of protests and a lot of stuff going on back in the days. And it's something when you look at, a lot of the music that I love is from that time. Some of my favorite music is from like the late 60s, early 70s, especially. And especially the Marvin Gaye's What's Going On record and stuff like that, and Curtis Mayfield and Sly and the Family Stone and all that music that meant so much back in the days, and it means so much right now.
Was it you picking those, or was it your pop, your family? How take us back to being that where the period you're describing, and how those, because you're being part of the Neville family is going to be a little unique when it comes to your musical indoctrination.
Well, our family, not only being musicians, they're all music lovers, like all of us are. And so my dad had some records. He had a lot of records, and there was some. Well, I'm gonna say when I was 9, 10 years old, like that, there was. I mean, there were records before that. I mean, that I remember from a small child, but I was more aware of what these songs were about when I was getting a little older. And in 1968, 69, 70 was Sly and the Family Stone with all the stuff that they did. And my dad, our family always had a lot of records around, and so it was always some small record player that you had access to as a kid, and you'd play those records. And then I remember seeing the album of What's Going On and hearing that music all the time. It was played on the radio all the time, and my dad had that album. Our family had that record, and listening to that stuff and just loving that period of music. It's a great era.
And being exposed to it too, though, right? I mean, there they are performing and actually making music themselves. In addition to you being, and then you, I mean, talk about first picking up an instrument, which I'm assuming that same era leads to.
Yeah, no, around that time is when I was 10, I picked up a guitar, and I basically played a couple of bass lines on the guitar, and I picked up on maybe Sing a Simple Song by Sly and the Family Stone. I picked up on Chicken Strut by the Meters. I also picked up on a couple of Jackson 5 guitar lines. And I didn't stick with the guitar. Obviously, I kind of put matter of fact, one of my uncle Cyril borrowed my guitar one time. I lost interest a little bit. I kind of stopped, practicing on it a little bit. And my uncle Cyril borrowed that guitar one day. I never saw it again. And I went back to doing what I was doing, listening to records and playing football in the streets and stuff like that. And, going to school and all that. And I didn't, the piano kind of piqued my interest. I kind of always had a slight interest in the piano because there was always a piano around. My mom played piano as a child, and so there was always a piano around. And I knew my uncle Art was a keyboard player, and another friend of the family was a guy by the name of James Booker. He went to grade school with my dad. He went to high school with my mom, and he would show up at the house every so often and play. And he's probably, I mean, no, he's the most amazing piano player I'd ever heard in my entire life to this day. And he would come around and I'd see him play, and I was fascinated.
Wow.
And my dad knew a couple of songs on the piano. He played a little bit, and my dad actually showed me a couple of things, and I just kind of, I dug how it made me feel playing a little bit of piano.
Do you remember any of the stuff your dad showed you that you
He
can show
showed me
us?
that. That was a. That was a song by my uncle Art called Cabbage Alley, but my dad taught me to play that. That
Wow.
was probably the first song I learned how to play on the piano. And yeah, from there I just started picking up little bits and pieces here and there, listening to the radio, learning stuff by ear. James Booker showed me one song. He showed me this. James Booker showed me that one. That's a
Wow.
Professor Longhair song,
Yeah.
and I just kind of dug it. And I started playing in the stage band in high school, and that kind of the attention I got and the response I got playing with the stage band at school was an amazing thing for me. And people, like, hey, that's that dude, that's that cat play with that piano, Ivan, blah blah, It was very cool. The girls dug it.
Right.
The girls dug it. My fellow, all the hoodlums. I got respect from everybody.
What a cool thing that
Yeah.
evolution of doing that. And do you remember the first time you actually ended up on stage with your pop, or with in a familial way that you thought, wow, I'm joining the family empire to some
Well,
degree?
actually, my first paying gig was with my dad and my great uncle George Landry. He's mostly known as Big Chief Jolly of the Wild Chapatulas. And my dad had a gig. It was in a basement of a house that I not and I believe the house was owned by Sonny Schneider's sister. Sonny Schneider and his sister and 12 other people were known as the Fabulous 14. They were the people that turned the 501 Club into the music venue that we now know and love. It's called Tipitina's.
Wow.
So that group of people used to throw parties, and I believe it was at Sonny's sister's house somewhere in New Orleans, and they would throw house parties. And my dad invited me to join he and my great uncle Big Chief Jolly, and we performed at this party. And I
On
played a little piano. My dad played a little piano. I played a little conga drum. Big Chief Jolly had a tambourine, and it was a three-piece little unit, and we played a little bit. And my dad handed me $100 after it was all said and done. I was like, wow, $100 to
how
come and hang out and play a little music and have some fun. This is pretty cool.
how old were you?
I was probably 16 or probably 17 years old.
Wow. In 1994, I got to go in
I was
Tipitina's. I did the Jazz Fest once, so I can actually
right.
appreciate what you're talking
Yeah,
about.
yeah.
That's a great place. Wow, that's a great. So there you are getting to like begin your. And when I think of the record too, just before I get into a couple of these other, because you're opening up to so many classic stories that you cover Buddy Miles and Sly and the Family Stone on. Again, it's Ivan Neville from Dumpsta Funk talking about this "Where Do We Go From Here" explosive, very funky record he's got. Are those artists that at any point in your life you got to spend personal interactions with?
You know what? Unfortunately, I never got to spend time with Sly, with Sylvester Stewart, but he's absolutely one of my idols. I always loved his music from day one, and that music, Sly and the Family Stone, is a big inspiration to Dumpster Funk's sound.
Yeah.
A lot of myself, Nick Daniels, Tony Hall, everybody in the group, but the three guys that come that were, that were children of the 60s and 70s, we were really hit hard by that music. Now, I did meet Buddy Miles a while ago, and I didn't spend a whole lot of time with him, but we crossed paths a couple of times. And actually, a couple of those times was very, it was some very shady shit going on. It was very, wasn't it wasn't the most wholesome kind of hang you would want to, you wouldn't want to invite your aspiring young kids to. No, it was some dark stuff going on when I met Buddy. But funny thing was the Buddy Miles song, United Nations Stomp. That was a song that Tony brought that song to us, and we like to pick up a cover song here and there and say, okay, let's find some obscure cover song and let's make it our own and put it in our rotation of tunes to play. We started playing that song on the live shows, and a lot of people don't really are not familiar with that song. It's not some popular song that they know.
Right.
When people think of Buddy Miles, they think of These Changes,
Correct.
or they think of his version of Down by the River, or they think of him playing with Hendrix and stuff like that. But they're not particularly familiar with that song. So when they started hearing us bump that, like, oh man, they thought it was a dumpster funk song. So we were like, oh wow, this is cool.
It's a great point because it's very reminiscent of what Funkadelic sounded like at that same exact time too.
Yes, that's a good comparison. Thank you.
It was very
and
much
so
like
that was a great fit to put on this record, especially in these trying times that we're living in. We tried to figure, that was a good message to try to convey. The song is for everybody, no matter where you come from, no matter what you look like, no matter who you love, no matter what you believe in, it doesn't matter. Everybody loves music. Everybody needs to try to get along and find some peace amongst their brothers and sisters and whatnot. So that was a good message as well. So we loved that we were able to, cover that song and do it justice and dumpsterify it,
It's just really, it's powerful that what you just said, this mix of like, not only is it some stellar funk and you get that New Orleans feel of funk in some of the jams, but then there's this, it's powerful about the fact that we need this unity so bad. The country is so fractured. The world is in such a terrible spot, and the United States is, with the way politically, and I don't have to tell you, every day the shootings, the division.
Oh my God, yeah, it's totally crazy.
When to think that you adopt a message like that, I just love what you said. It's powerful. It'll resonate with so many people when they hear it on the radio, really. And you have these serious connections that I don't think, as you were talking about how that jam, that United Nations Stomp, in a lot of ways people don't necessarily remember or think of. I think of your life, and before you started this funk odyssey that you've been doing with your band that has risen to such a prominence there, coming out of the Crescent City, you have these serious Rolling Stones connections, and I think it's like really worth pointing them out to folks. Take us, dial, because there are a variety of them. I'm sure in your mind you can remember where it began.
Okay, yeah, absolutely. Okay, the first connection was made through the Meters. My Uncle Art's band, the Meters, opened up for the Stones, I believe, in 1975.
Wow.
They went on some tours with the Stones. They toured Europe with the Stones, and they toured they did some dates in the United States. And that was the first connection. And then later on, the brothers, the Neville brothers had made a record. It was on A&M Records, and I don't remember. I think the name of the album was called Fire on the Bayou. And there was a Rolling Stone article. Keith Richards was on the cover of Rolling Stones, and this was maybe in 1980 or something like that. Maybe 80, somewhere 80, 81, 80. And Keith had announced at the beginning of his article, he announced this was he thought maybe the best record that he had heard thus far in that particular year, and it was the Neville Brothers.
Wow!
And that was a pretty cool plug, know. And from that, the brothers ended up going on tour. We did open up for the Stones, and I was playing with the Neville Brothers at the time. This is 1981, and we did we opened up for the Stones in Chicago, and this was on the Tattoo You tour, I believe.
Wow.
1981. And we opened up for the Stones in Chicago, Louisville, Kentucky, and in New Orleans at the Superdome in New Orleans. And I believe who else was I remember some others were. I remember like George Thorogood was on some of those shows
Right. Right.
and stuff like that. And the Neville brothers and the Stones. And I remember, meeting those guys during that time. And I mean, Keith was obviously more approachable than a lot of people. I mean, when you with the Stones, you usually would meet Keith. If you're hanging around the Stones, you might get to meet Keith. You might get to meet Ron Woods, and that was kind of the vibe. And shortly after that, there was talk of the brothers doing something either with the Stones or maybe so we ended up in New York in a recording studio at Electric Ladyland Studios with Keith and Ron Woods.
Wow.
And we were playing around with some stuff. And that was it. We hung out. I think we went to Woody's house that night. Woody was living in New York, and we went to his house. We hung out and had a fun time. I must say that was a very fun night. That's all I'm going to say about that. And so that was it. And then that was the initial real connection was made between me and those guys, because not that long after that, I believe in 1986 or 1985 or something like that, I was in New York and I had been playing with Bonnie Raitt.
Right.
I was playing keyboards with Bonnie Raitt during a period of around 1984, 85, 86. And we were in New York, and I think I hung out in New York when the tour was over, and a friend of mine by the name of Rob Faboni, I think I maybe was crashing out at Rob's house or something. And he said, hey, the Stones are in the recording studio recording a record. And so I'm like, oh, cool. So let's go by there. So we went to some sessions where the Stones were, and they were working on this album called Dirty Work. And I ended up singing backups on some stuff. I ended up playing bass on a song on that record. There's a song called Hold Back where I'm on bass.
Amazing.
Matter of fact, they spliced a little bit of Ron Wood's bass part and some of my bass part on the one song.
Amazing.
So I'm playing bass. I'm sharing a bass track with Ron Wood, Rolling Stones recording. And so I got pretty. We had some cool hangs. I had some cool hangs with Keith and Ronnie during that time. And shortly after that, I think maybe a couple years later, I made that record came out. Dirty Work came out. I was on this Stones record, so I was like totally, I was thrilled to beyond belief that I got to not only be on a Stone. I played bass on the Stones record. That was like, I'm a keyboard guy,
Right. Your dad must have been so thrilled for you, huh?
I could play a little bit of bass, and I was on the Stones record. So everybody was excited about stuff like that. But then not that long after that, around 1987, I was working on my first record, which was going to be called If My Ancestors Could See Me Now. That was going to be released on Polydor Records. I was working on that stuff, and I got a call from Keith that he was working on putting something together for his little solo project. So I was summoned to New York, and I went to New York, and I was in a room with Keith, Waddy Wachtel, Steve Jordan, Charlie Drayton, and myself, and we were playing around, and that ended up being a band that played and recorded with Keith for his record called Talk Is Cheap.
Expensive Winos.
And that was the beginning of the Expensive Winos. Yes. I ended up playing in that group, in the band with Keith, and I mean that's like, So I was probably one of the coolest. I was probably some of the cool. No question. That was some of the coolest, stuff I've ever done before.
And that's where you met. That's where we just had a guy on the show who knows you, and a friend of yours from the band Soul Asylum, Dave Perner. And
Yes, that's where I met Dave. Yeah, Dave, and they opened up some dates with us. Dave Perner, Soul Asylum, and because Jordan was producing some stuff for Dave and them, and they opened up some winos shows, and I ended up playing. Dave got me to play on an unplugged Soul Asylum gig, and that's when I connected with those guys. But yeah, those were some fun times, man.
yeah, he told us about watching your daughter dancing to the expensive winos, and he was talking about how when he was producing records in New Orleans, you'd do sessions with him. He said he'd always pay you in cash.
Yeah, it was.
He said
prior to 1998, I was that kind of dude.
He had a funny line. He said, "But I think he kicked his gambling habit."
Oh, my gambling habit. Oh my God. So that's what he's talking about. Oh, jeez. I played cards every now and again. I never was really that bad with that kind of stuff. But okay. All right, Dave. Go ahead. You got me there.
Just some fun stuff that he was.
All right, yeah.
And you know who else we had on? Who's a bud? We've had a bunch of your friends on. It's kind of crazy. Hutch Hutchinson.
Hutch. Oh yeah, oh man, that's my man. Well, me and Hutch played together. Hutch. A lot of people don't know this. Hutch was the bass player in the Neville Brothers band when we went on tour with the Stones.
Exactly. Right.
Yes, Hutch was in the Neville Brothers band when I joined them in 1970, late 78 to 79, when I joined the Brothers. And then Hutch left right after we did the Stone stuff, and Hutch left and moved to California.
Right.
So he joined up with Bonnie Raitt, I believe, in 1983 or something like that.
Right.
And
exactly.
I moved out to California, and I joined the band with he and Bonnie in 84.
Exactly.
Yeah.
No, he said he's tight with you, and
that's my man. Yes, he's like a brother to me, a big brother to me. My man Hutch. Yeah, he's got a place over in Maui.
Correct. Right.
Right. Yeah.
Yep. You ever been over there to visit him?
I have not been over there to visit Hutch, but I did go over there one time.
That show you.
That last time I was there, I coincidentally ran into him at some. I swear it was the funniest thing. I was at some shop. I was going to get something to eat somewhere, and I ran into Hutch. That was the funniest thing in the world. Like, oh my God, small world.
Right. Well, small island too, there for sure.
Yeah.
And you also have when I think about your connection to other people, your band has had a lot of folks. Dumpster Funk has had a lot of noteworthy musicians sit in. You got another Hawaii connection. Sometime Kauai resident Carlos Santana has sat in with you.
Oh, Carlos! Oh man, yeah. Wow, what a cool guy, man. I got a funny story about Carlos, and then check this out. So we were playing a show in San Francisco at the Fillmore, and it was Dumpster Funk. We were opening up for Carl Dentz's Tiny Universe.
Oh wow!
At the Fillmore, and my friend Greg Rico, the original drummer from Sly and the Family Stone, was going to come and see us play and come and hang out. He's a good friend, and Greg sat in with Dumpster Funk before, and I've played with a version of the Family Stone experience with Greg as well. But Greg's a good friend, so Greg said he was coming to the show. And then at some point we were texting, and Greg said, "Hey, you know what? I'm bringing Carlos with me." I'm like, "Oh." So I told the guy in the band, I said, yo, bro, I think Carlos Santana's coming to the gig tonight. They were like, what? I'm like, Greg Rico's coming to the show. They all knew that. I said, but I think Carlos is with him, and he's coming to the gig. So they were like, oh, my God. So they showed up there. Carlos came there, and then we asked Carlos, did he want to play? And we played the Buddy Miles song, United Nations Stomp, to end our set. And I believe we had Greg Rico play. We had Carlos come up and play United Nations Stomp with us. And then Greg came up and we played Sing a Simple Song, Sly and the Family Stone tune. And the crowd was going buck wild, like, oh my God, the noise and the buzz in the Fillmore. And my friend Carl Denson and his band had just arrived because they were the headliner that night. And they showed up And they were like, "One damn, what the hell happened? You know, we just got here. What the happened?" And we were like, "Oh yeah, Carlos Santana just sat in with us." Like, the opening band had Carlos Santana sitting in. Wow, how you gonna follow that up? Right? That's funny, man. Carl D is my man, but that was a tough one there.
Right, upstage
Go
and
and play after that. How you go play after that? You know.
that is some serious
Yeah.
upstaging right there, my brother. That's
Yeah, you know, and then, now that I'm on it's a subject of Sly and the Family Stone. So check this out. So it's Greg Rico, my man. That we mentioned the Buddy Miles tune that we covered on Dumpster's record,
right.
and so we covered a song. And I'm going to tell you this. There's certain songs you don't mess with. There's certain songs you don't do them. You say you listen to them, you admire them for what they are, and that's it. You don't try to cover that song. You may play it, maybe hypothetically you might say, I'm gonna try to play this one night. I wonder what would happen. Let's play it. You give it a shot. You get daring and you're brave but there's certain songs you don't cover. We did that with this song In Time. That's one of the songs you do not mess with.
It's on the record.
Yeah, and we did it. We did that song, and I think we did a pretty good version of it. And I'm pretty proud of that one.
It's tasty, very tasty.
But that's one of the ones you don't mess with because it's so special. That recording. What is that on Fresh? Right? That's on Sly. That's on Fresh.
I'm pretty sure it has that crazy time signature in that. That has
yeah. Because that's not Greg Rico on that one. That's Andy Newmark, I believe, playing drums on that particular song. But yeah, that's one you don't cover, but Dumpster went on and did it anyway. So you can check that out on the Where Do We Go From Here record.
No, it's a fantastic jam on there, and it's cool just how you mix so many things like this together. And there's a lot of different political message that's relevant about unity, and I love what you said about how you tap that for the Buddy Miles jam.
Yeah.
You get any feedback from your pop on the record before we wrap it up?
Oh, he loved it. He definitely loved the record. Yeah, he gave us some, gave us a thumbs up. So, yeah, it's kicking, bro.
And you sent him a physical copy, or how does he?
You know what? We have to do that. We have not sent Big A a physical copy. You just put a bug in my ear that's an oversight on my serious oversight. Got to send Big A copy. Yeah.
I love it. Are you warming up to play us a little something?
Just playing the little B section on one of the songs. It goes, "There's no guarantee in this thing called life. Sometimes we want to see just what we think is right, but it all comes down to love. Where do we go from here? Let's take it slow, no fear. What we don't know becomes clear. Baby, let's go somewhere."
Dude, you're so kind. So kind to do that. You know what I'm saying?
Thank you, man.
You know what I'm saying? Giving you hugs, high fives.
You're right. Thank you, man.
I mean, that really is like, and you just have that voice, dude. It's so beautiful. I mean, it just hits you. I don't know, the genes or something are going on there, my brother. I mean,
thanks a lot, man. I really appreciate it.
I mean it from the heart because I grew up with that music too. I mean, that what was that? The one when I was a kid was Yellow Moon, Yellow Moon, Yellow Moon.
Yeah, the brothers.
I mean, that was when I was a kid. That was the era. And so, I mean, I have a deep connection to your family. I was just 17.
Yeah, that's great. And that's a great song to connect to. And for me, that's a special song because that's a song my dad wrote. And he wrote it. It was about my mom. It was inspired by my mom,
Yeah, it's a powerful one. So whenever I think of, I don't know. So I just share that with you. So yeah, I do have a deep connection to your family that I'll never forget. And saw them at the New Orleans Jazz Festival on the big stage there at the racetrack.
Very cool. There's nothing like that. There's nothing like that Jazz and Heritage Festival.
No, there isn't. I mean, I just so many good memories there. I saw the almonds there one time, just
Yeah.
ripping it up on that. Boz Skaggs, Buddy Guy, almonds all
Yeah.
afternoon.
That's the greatest party. That's the greatest party going, man. The New Orleans Jazz and Heritage Festival.
Yeah, it'll be great. Well, hopefully
Yeah.
you doing it this fall.
We're doing it this fall in October. That's crazy, huh?
Man,
Yeah.
I hope it goes good, and I hope that eventually you can make your way out here again, and that you'll do Honolulu. Maybe you do the Blue Note or something like that.
I hope so, man. I'd love to come out there and play.
And
We
maybe
have to work on that. We're gonna have to work on that. Yeah.
I will do what I can when the things open up and try to keep a bug in
Yeah.
people's ear for you. Did you have fun today, Ivan? Was this okay?
No, this was beautiful, man. Thanks a lot, man. I had a blast talking.
It was a lot of fun. The great Ivan Neville joining us today. Where do we go from here? The new record. And I hope you stay safe. You shared so many personal stories, your beautiful voice, the COVID experience. My gosh. So it's just a remarkable, generous time that you've given us here. So I hope you feel appreciated, because you are, my brother.
Thank you very much, man. Thanks for inviting me. Good talking to you, man. Aloha, everybody. This is Ivan Neville of Dumpster Funk. I came back to support Hawaii Public Radio. It was a lot of fun being on All Things Considered, and it was a pleasure being a guest of the Off the Road series with my man, Dave Lawrence. But I got a request that you become a member. You become a member right now, and I'm going to show you how to do it. Thanks for your support.
You're an animal, brother. I'm giving you huge high fives, and
Thank you, man. Appreciate it.
and I'll tell Hutch that I was rapping to you. And
Yeah, I'm gonna call him up and tell him. Yeah.
call him up. Say I was just talking to your buddy Dave Lawrence, because
Yeah, you're right.
I love Hutch. I think highly of him. He's a nice man. So
Thanks, man. Appreciate it a lot, Dave. All right.
aloha, brother.
All right, brother.